Astrid's hands trembled as she clutched the worn map her aunt had tried to hide. 10 years! 10 years since her father's death, and she'd never visited his grave. Not once. Her aunt had always made excuses. Too far, too dangerous, too painful. But today, on the 10th anniversary of his death and her 23rd birthday, Astrid had found the map tucked in her aunt's locked drawer. A simple mark in the northern forest, miles from any pack territory. A grave so isolated it might as well have been a secret. Where are you watching from? I hope you've never discovered that everything you believed about yourself was a carefully constructed lie. That the parent you thought you knew died protecting a truth that could shatter kingdoms. Astrid left before dawn, telling no one. The small pack where she'd lived since her father's death had never truly accepted her anyway. She was the orphaned Omega, the daughter of a common warrior who died in some forgotten skirmish. No family name, no status, no prospects. She worked as a seamstress for the pack, invisible and unimportant. If she disappeared for a day, no one would notice. The forest grew denser as she traveled north, following the map's crude markings. Astrid had vague memories of her father. Tall, strong, gentle hands that had braided her white blonde hair, a voice that had made her feel safe. But those memories were from childhood, filtered through time and loss. She'd been 13 when he died, old enough to remember, young enough to have forgotten the details that mattered. Her aunt had raised her afterward, but never spoke of him. Every question about her father had been met with the same response. He was a good man who died too young. Nothing more. No stories. No explanations. No comfort. Just silence and the clear message that the past should stay buried. But Astrid needed to know. Even if it was just a grave in the woods, even if it gave her nothing but closure. She needed to see where he rested. The clearing appeared suddenly, as if the forest had been hiding it on purpose, waiting for the right person to find it. Astrid pushed through the last of the dense undergrowth, branches catching on her simple traveling cloak, and froze. The grave was heartbreakingly simple. A rough stone marker, weathered by a decade of seasons, with a single name carved deeply enough that wind and rain hadn't erased it. Fenrir. No dates marking the span of his life, no titles proclaiming his achievements, no words of love or loss to commemorate who he'd been or how he'd died. Just a name and a small clearing that had been maintained somehow, mysteriously kept clear of the forest's natural encroachment. Wildflowers grew around the base of the marker. Someone had been tending them, keeping the grave beautiful despite its isolation. Astrid felt tears burn in her eyes. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times during her journey, pictured herself finally standing where her father rested, finally able to say the things she'd never gotten to say as a grieving 13-year-old girl. She'd brought flowers from the village she'd passed through yesterday, white roses, because she vaguely remembered her father giving them to her mother. The memory was hazy, filtered through years and grief, but she clung to it. It was one of the few pieces of him she had left. Astrid took a step into the clearing, her hand clutching the roses so tightly the thorns bit into her palm. "Hi, Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I know it's been too long. Aunt Helen said it was better not to visit, that it would only make the grief worse. But I needed to see you. I needed to know where you were resting. I needed to tell you that I—" Her words died in her throat, because that's when she saw them. It wasn't the grave that made Astrid's breath catch in her chest, made her heart stutter to a stop, made every instinct scream at her to run. It was the wolves. 25 massive white wolves sat in a perfect circle around the grave marker, not lying down, not sleeping, sitting in formation like an honor guard, their bodies facing outward, protecting something precious at their center. They were enormous, far larger than any wolves Astrid had ever seen. Their fur was pure white, gleaming in the morning sun that filtered through the trees, and they were absolutely, utterly still. Astrid took an involuntary step backward. Her movement broke whatever spell had held the clearing in silence. As one, all 25 massive heads turned toward her. 25 pairs of ice-blue eyes locked onto her face. She should run. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But her legs wouldn't move. Her father's grave was right there, and between her and it sat what looked like a mythical wolf army that shouldn't exist. The largest wolf, sitting at the northernmost point of the circle, rose slowly to its feet. It was massive, even compared to the others, its shoulder easily reaching Astrid's chest if it were to stand beside her. The wolf took 3 measured steps forward, never breaking eye contact with her. Then it did something that made Astrid's mind stutter to a halt. It bowed. The massive white wolf lowered its enormous head until its muzzle nearly touched the ground. And behind it, like a wave, all 24 other wolves did the same. A perfect, synchronized show of reverence. Astrid's heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't normal wolf behavior. This wasn't any kind of behavior she'd ever seen or heard of. Wolves didn't bow to omegas. Wolves didn't sit in perfect formation around graves. Wolves didn't look at you with the kind of intelligence and recognition gleaming in these ice-blue eyes. The largest wolf shifted, its body contorted, reformed, and within seconds, a man knelt where the wolf had been. He was older, perhaps 50, with white hair pulled back in a warrior's braid and pale blue eyes that matched his wolf form. Scars crossed his bare chest and arms. He wore simple leather pants, but no shirt, as if he'd been in wolf form so long he'd forgotten the need for more. "Princess," the man said, his voice rough from disuse, "you finally came." Astrid found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "I'm not a princess. I'm nobody. Just an omega, looking for her father's grave." The man's weathered face softened with something that might have been grief or relief, or both. "You're Fenrir's daughter. That makes you everything." He touched his chest in a formal gesture. "I am Glacier, first guard of King Fenrir's elite. We have waited 10 years for you to come of age." "King?" Astrid's laugh was sharp and disbelieving. "My father wasn't a king. He was a warrior, a common soldier who died in a random fight. That's all." Glacier's expression hardened. "That is what they told you. That is the lie your father died to maintain." He gestured to the 24 wolves still bowing behind him. "Do common soldiers command the loyalty of the elite guard? Do ordinary warriors have 25 of the strongest wolves in the kingdom swear blood oaths to guard their graves?" Astrid shook her head, backing away. "This doesn't make sense. If my father was someone important, why was I raised by my aunt in a nothing pack? Why did we have nothing? Why did he die alone?" "He didn't die alone." Glacier's voice carried the weight of old pain. "We were there, all of us, but we couldn't stop it. We were too late." He looked at the grave marker, and something in his face cracked. "And after, we kept our oath. We've guarded him for 10 years, waiting for the day you would come, waiting for the day you would be old enough to hear the truth." "What truth?" Astrid demanded. Even as part of her wanted to run, to unhear whatever this man was about to say. Glacier met her eyes. "Your father was Fenrir, firstborn son of King Aldrich, rightful heir to the throne of the northern kingdoms. He was betrayed by his own family, declared a traitor through lies and manipulation. He fled not because he was guilty, but because he was protecting your mother, who was pregnant with you. He gave up his crown, his name, his power to keep you both safe." The world tilted. Astrid grabbed a nearby tree for support. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Glacier gestured to the bowing wolves. "Look at them. The elite guard serves only one line, only true royalty. They cannot be commanded, cannot be controlled, cannot be fooled. They know blood, they know legitimacy, and they know you." As if responding to his words, all 24 wolves raised their heads and looked at Astrid. Not with the predatory gaze of wild animals, but with something that looked horribly like hope and recognition and loyalty. When your father died, Glacier continued, we made a choice. We could have revealed ourselves, could have told the kingdom their true king was gone. But your father's last words were to protect you, to let you grow up safe and unknown until you were strong enough to claim what was yours. So we stayed here, guarding his rest, waiting for you. I don't want a crown, Astrid said immediately. I don't want any of this. I just wanted to know my father. Then know this. Glacier's voice softened. He loved you enough to give up everything. He could have fought for the throne, could have raised armies, could have taken back what was his. But he chose to hide, chose to be forgotten, chose to let his brother steal his birthright, all to keep you safe. Tears burned in Astrid's eyes. She'd spent 10 years thinking her father was nobody, 10 years ashamed of her lack of family name, her lack of status. 10 years working as a seamstress in a pack that barely tolerated her. And all that time, her father had been a king who'd sacrificed his kingdom for her. Who rules now? She asked, her voice barely audible. Your cousin, Cassian, son of your father's younger brother. He's been king for 8 years, since his own father died. Glacier's expression was carefully neutral. He knows nothing of the betrayal. He was a child when it happened. He believes himself the legitimate heir. Then he is, Astrid said firmly. I don't know anything about being royalty. He was raised for it. Let him have it. Glacier shook his head. It's not that simple. The elite guard cannot serve a false king. We have been without our rightful ruler for 23 years. The moment you manifested as Omega, the moment you came of age, our bond to the throne activated. We are yours now, whether you want us or not. And if we declare you, the kingdom will know. The truth will come out. Don't declare me then, Astrid said desperately. Just let me visit my father's grave and go home. Let me go back to my simple life. Too late, a new voice said from behind her, deep and commanding and edged with something that might have been wonder or dread or both. Astrid spun so fast she nearly lost her balance. A massive wolf, easily the size of the ones in the circle, but with fur the color of honey gold instead of pure white, stood at the edge of the clearing. Its amber eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle with awareness. And beside it, in human form, stood a man who could only be the current Alpha King. He was devastatingly handsome in a way that seemed almost unfair. Tall, easily over 6.5 feet, and powerfully built, with shoulders that spoke of years of training and battle. His hair was the same honey gold as his wolf form, falling just past his shoulders and catching the sunlight that filtered through the trees. His eyes were pure amber, glowing with an inner fire that marked him as royalty. He wore simple traveling leathers, as if he'd come from the palace in a hurry, but even in plain clothes, he radiated power and authority. And he was staring at Astrid like she'd just rewritten everything he thought he knew about the world. Mate. The word fell from his lips like a prayer and a curse combined, rough with shock and longing and confusion all tangled together. And Astrid felt it. The mate bond didn't snap into place gently. It slammed into her with the force of a physical blow, stealing the breath from her lungs and making her knees buckle. Her wolf, which had been quiet her entire life, so quiet she'd sometimes wondered if she was broken, if her Omega nature was somehow flawed, suddenly surged forward with desperate, overwhelming joy. Mate, mate. Finally, mate. The bond was a living thing, a golden thread that wrapped around her heart and pulled, insisting with primal certainty that this man, this stranger, this king was hers. That they belonged to each other with a rightness that transcended logic or timing or the impossible complications of their situation. Astrid grabbed the nearest tree to stay upright, her whole body shaking with the intensity of it. This was wrong. This was the worst possible timing, the cruelest twist of fate, Because the mate the moon goddess had given her, the one person in all the world meant to be hers, was the man currently sitting on her father's stolen throne. Cassian took a step toward her, his hand outstretched, his expression raw with the same shock and longing she felt. "I felt you," he said, his voice rough. "For days, I felt the bond pulling me north, getting stronger every morning. This morning, it became unbearable, like something inside me was being torn apart. I had to find you. I didn't understand why until now." "Stay back," Astrid managed, though her wolf was howling in protest at the command. "Don't come closer." Cassian stopped, hurt flashing across his handsome face. "The mate bond is a mistake," Astrid finished desperately, "or a cruel joke, or something. But it can't be real, it can't be right, not like this." "The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes," Cassian said softly. But he didn't move closer, respecting her request even as the bond pulled at them both. Then his attention shifted, his amber eyes widening as he finally took in the rest of the clearing. The elite guard, moon goddess above, no one's seen them in over 2 decades. They disappeared when my father took the throne. Everyone thought they were dead. His gaze found Glacier, standing in formal guard position, then back to Astrid, and she watched realization begin to dawn in those amber eyes. "Who are you?" "No one," Astrid whispered, even as her heart broke at the lie. "Just an Omega. Liar." Cassian's voice carried alpha command, but it was gentle, confused rather than angry. "The mate bond doesn't lie, and the elite guard doesn't bow to no one." He took another step forward, stopped when Astrid flinched. "Please, just tell me your name." "Astrid," she said, because what was the point of hiding it now? The moment the elite guard had bowed, her anonymity was over. "Astrid," Cassian repeated, like he was tasting the name, testing how it felt. Then he looked at Glacier, and his voice hardened with command. "Who is she? And why does the elite guard bow to an Omega from a northern pack?" Glacier's answer was formal, final. "She is Princess Astrid, daughter of King Fenrir, rightful heir to the throne you currently occupy." The clearing fell into absolute silence. Cassian stared at Astrid. Astrid stared at the ground. The 25 white wolves watched them both with patient, ancient eyes. And somewhere in the forest, birds sang, utterly oblivious to the moment that would change everything. "This isn't possible," Cassian said finally. "My uncle said King Fenrir betrayed the kingdom, fled like a coward, died in exile. There was no daughter, no heir." "Your uncle lied." Glacier's voice was hard as stone. "King Fenrir was betrayed, not the betrayer. He was the firstborn son, the legitimate heir. Your grandfather, King Aldrich, chose him, but your great-uncle Mordrin couldn't accept it. He wanted the throne for his line. So he manufactured evidence, spread lies, turned the council against Fenrir. When Fenrir discovered his mate was pregnant, he chose to flee rather than drag an innocent into war." Cassian's face had gone pale. "Mordrin. He's been my advisor since my father died. He's the one who told me about the old king's betrayal. He's the one who said the elite guard abandoned their posts." "The elite guard never abandons," Glacier said coldly. "We were banished on false charges. We followed our true king into exile, and when he was murdered, we kept our oath. We've been here for 10 years, waiting." "Murdered?" Astrid's voice cracked. "You said he died in a fight." Glacier turned to her, and his expression was full of old rage. "He was assassinated. Hunters found him when you were 13. They were hired to eliminate the last loose end. Your father fought. He killed 6 of them. But there were 10, and he was trying to draw them away from your mother's grave. He led them here deliberately, to this clearing where we were camped. We heard the fight. We came running. But by the time we arrived, he was dying." Tears streamed down Astrid's face. Her father hadn't died in some random skirmish. He'd been murdered, hunted down and killed to erase the truth. Who hired them? Cassian's voice was deadly quiet. Glacier met the young king's eyes. We never found proof. But who benefits from eliminating all of Fenrir's line? Who has been whispering in your ear for 8 years, guiding your every decision? Who knew Fenrir was alive and could have revealed the truth at any moment? Mordrin, Cassian breathed. Then louder, with rage building. Mordrin. Your great-uncle orchestrated everything, Glacier confirmed. He manipulated your grandfather into doubting Fenrir. He convinced your father that taking the throne was justice rather than theft. And when your father started asking questions 8 years ago, likely Mordrin eliminated him too. You've been a puppet king, Your Majesty, a placeholder until Mordrin could find a way to take power completely. Cassian looked like he'd been struck. His amber eyes found Astrid again, and in them she saw grief and rage and guilt and something else. The mate bond, pulling at them both, insisting they were meant to be together even as everything else tried to tear them apart. I should abdicate, Cassian said finally. If you're the rightful heir, I have no claim. No. Astrid's voice was stronger than she felt. I don't want the throne. I was raised to be a seamstress, not a queen. You were trained for this. You've ruled for 8 years. The kingdom needs you. The kingdom needs its true ruler, Glacier said. Blood doesn't lie. The elite guard doesn't lie. You are the heir, princess, whether you were trained for it or not. Then train me, Astrid shot back. I'm 23. Give me 5 years, 10, however long it takes, but don't throw the kingdom into chaos because of crimes committed before I was born. Cassian was staring at her with something like awe. You'd give up your birthright? I'd give up a title I never knew I had to prevent a war, Astrid corrected. But I won't let my father's murderer go unpunished. If Mordrin did this, if he killed my father and manipulated yours, he needs to face justice. Agreed. Cassian's voice carried the weight of alpha command now. We go to the palace, together. We investigate, and if Mordrin is guilty, he pays for every death, every lie, every stolen year. Together? Astrid echoed. Cassian stepped closer, and the mate bond sang between them. You're my mate. That's not a mistake, no matter how complicated everything else is. And maybe, just maybe, that's the answer. Not your throne or my throne. Our throne. The kingdom has never had a co-ruling pair, Glacier said, but his tone was thoughtful rather than dismissive. The kingdom has never had a situation like this, Cassian countered. But I won't give her up. The moon goddess chose us for a reason. Maybe this is it. Maybe we're meant to unite what Mordrin tried to divide. Astrid wanted to argue, wanted to say it was too fast, too complicated, too impossible. But her wolf was howling with joy. The mate bond was pulling at her like a physical tether, and somewhere deep in her heart, something that might have been her father's legacy whispered that maybe, just maybe, this could work. We have to be smart about this, she said carefully. If Mordrin is as dangerous as you say, he'll fight, he'll manipulate. He'll try to turn the kingdom against us. Then we don't give him the chance. Cassian's smile was sharp and dangerous. We play his game. We investigate quietly, and when we have proof, we strike. Glacier bowed, and behind him, all 24 wolves bowed again. The elite guard serves the throne. If you two rule together, we serve you both. Astrid looked at the grave marker, at her father's name carved in stone, at the simple resting place of a king who'd given up everything to protect her. She made a silent promise. I'll make it mean something, Dad. I'll make your sacrifice count. Then she looked at Cassian, at the mate the moon goddess had chosen for her in the cruelest and most perfect twist of fate. Together, then. But if this goes wrong, I'm blaming you. Cassian's laugh was surprised and genuine. Fair enough, but it won't go wrong. We won't let it." As they prepared to leave the clearing, the 25 white wolves rose from their positions around the grave. In perfect formation, they surrounded Astrid and Cassian, creating a moving guard of mythical protectors. And for the first time in 10 years, the elite guard left their post, because their true purpose had arrived. The princess had come home, and with her, maybe, the kingdom could finally heal. The journey to the palace took 2 days. They traveled carefully, Cassian sending his golden wolf ahead to warn the palace guard of their arrival, while Astrid rode with Glacier and the elite guard. The wolves moved through the forest like ghosts, silent and swift, drawing no attention. Cassian explained as they traveled. He'd felt the mate bond pulling him north for days, getting stronger each morning. On her 23rd birthday, it had become unbearable. He'd left the palace before dawn, following the pull, expecting to find his mate in some northern pack. Instead, he'd found the elite guard and a truth that shattered everything he thought he knew about his family. "Mordrin raised me after my father died," Cassian admitted as they made camp the first night. "He taught me statecraft, strategy, how to rule. I trusted him completely. He's the only family I had left." "He murdered your father," Glacier said bluntly from where he sat sharpening a blade. "King Theron started asking questions 8 years ago. Started investigating the old records. Wanted to know why the elite guard had really disappeared, why his brother had fled. Mordrin couldn't allow him to discover the truth. So he poisoned him slowly, made it look like a wasting illness." Cassian's jaw clenched. "You have proof of this?" "We have testimony. We have evidence. We've been gathering it for a decade." Glacier pulled out a leather satchel, worn and carefully preserved. "Everything is here. Documents showing Mordrin's payments to the hunters, letters between him and the old council members he corrupted, testimony from wolves who witnessed the betrayal. We couldn't come forward because we had no heir to protect. No one would believe us without Fenrir's daughter to legitimize our claims. But now we have her." Astrid stared at the satchel like it was a coiled snake. That was her father's death, her family's destruction, packaged neatly in old leather. "Why did you wait so long? Why not just kill Mordrin yourselves?" "Because that would make us murderers," Glacier said simply. "Justice must come through the throne, through the rightful heir, through you. I keep telling you, I'm not taking the throne. You don't have to sit on it to wield its power," Glacier said. "Blood is blood. The kingdom will recognize you the moment you step into the palace, the moment the elite guard declares you. Mordrin knows this. He's known for 23 years that if Fenrir's daughter ever appeared, his game would be over." "Then he'll try to kill me the moment I arrive," Astrid said. "Yes," Cassian agreed grimly. "Which is why we're not announcing you as the heir. Not yet. We'll say you're my mate, the Omega I've been searching for. No one will question that. The mate bond is obvious. And while they're celebrating the king finally finding his queen, we investigate. We gather more evidence. We build a case so strong even Mordrin's allies can't deny it." "And then?" Astrid asked. "Then we present it to the full council and the pack alphas. We show them what Mordrin did, and we let them decide his fate." Cassian's smile was cold. "I'm betting they won't be merciful." The plan had merit. It was risky, but everything about this situation was risky. Astrid agreed, and they continued toward the palace. The capital city appeared on the morning of the 3rd day. It was larger than anything Astrid had imagined, sprawling across a valley with the royal palace rising at its center like a crown of white stone. Thousands of wolves lived here. Thousands who believed Cassian was the rightful king, who had no idea of the betrayal woven into their history. The elite guard stopped at the forest's edge. "We cannot enter the city," Glacier explained. "We've been officially banished. If we're seen, it will cause immediate alarm. We'll camp in the forest and wait for your signal." "How will I signal you?" Astrid asked. Glacier pressed a small silver whistle into her hand. Only those of royal blood can make this sound. When you need us, blow it. We'll come. Astrid tucked the whistle into her dress pocket, then looked at the 25 massive white wolves arrayed behind Glacier. Her father's guard. Now her guard. It still felt impossible. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for waiting, for keeping faith." Glacier bowed. "We are yours, Princess, now and always." Cassian shifted to human form and offered Astrid his hand. "Ready to meet the Vipers?" "Not even slightly," Astrid admitted. But she took his hand anyway, and together they walked toward the palace that should have been her birthright, toward the uncle who'd stolen it, toward whatever ending this tangled story would find. The palace guard recognized their king immediately and opened the gates. Cassian's return caused immediate commotion. Servants rushed to attend him, advisors appeared from various halls, and within minutes, an older man with silver hair and calculating eyes appeared at the top of the main staircase. "Cassian," the man said warmly, descending with arms outstretched. "We were worried when you left so suddenly. Is everything all right?" "Everything is perfect, Uncle." Cassian's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I found my mate." Mordrin's gaze shifted to Astrid, and for just a moment something flickered in his expression. Recognition? Fear? It was gone too quickly to name. "How wonderful! The kingdom will be overjoyed. Come, you must tell me everything. Who is she? Where did you find her?" "Her name is Astrid," Cassian said, pulling her close. "And she's from a small northern pack. Nothing too exciting. But the mate bond doesn't lie." "No," Mordrin said slowly, his eyes still fixed on Astrid's face. "It certainly doesn't. Welcome to the palace, my dear. You must be overwhelmed." "Very," Astrid managed, forcing herself to meet his eyes. This was the man who'd ordered her father's death, the man who'd manipulated and murdered his way to power. And he was looking at her like he was trying to place her face, trying to figure out why she looked familiar. Because she looked like her father. She'd seen the portrait Glacier carried. Same white blonde hair, same pale blue eyes, same delicate features that marked the old royal line. If Mordrin looked closely enough, he'd see Fenrir in her face, and then they'd all be in danger. "Let's get her settled," Cassian said quickly, guiding Astrid toward the stairs. "She's had a long journey. Uncle, we'll meet for dinner and discuss the bonding ceremony details." Of course. But Mordrin's eyes never left Astrid's face as they passed him on the stairs. Once in Cassian's private chambers, Astrid finally let herself breathe. "He knows. Did you see his face? He knows something." "He suspects," Cassian corrected, "but he can't be certain. Hundreds of wolves have pale hair and blue eyes. It's a common northern trait." He paced the room, agitated. "We need to move faster than I thought. If he decides you're a threat, he'll act. Mordrin doesn't take chances." "How do we prove what he did?" Astrid asked. "Glacier has documents, but Mordrin will claim they're forgeries. He'll say the elite guard is lying to destabilize your rule." "We need someone from inside the conspiracy to talk," Cassian said. "One of the old council members who helped him. One of the hunters who killed your father. Someone whose testimony can't be dismissed." "And how do we find them?" Cassian's smile was sharp. "We ask someone who knows all the secrets." He pulled a cord by the door, and moments later, an elderly woman in healer's robes entered. "Your Majesty," she said, bowing. Then her eyes landed on Astrid and widened. "Moon goddess above, you found her." "Sage knows," Cassian said to Astrid. "She's known since I was a child. She was here when my grandfather ruled. She knows everything." The old healer approached Astrid slowly, her eyes filling with tears. "You look just like him. Fenrir was my friend. I helped your mother through her pregnancy, helped deliver you. And when Mordrin's plot succeeded, when Fenrir was forced to flee, I kept silent because I was a coward." "You kept silent to survive," Astrid said gently. "I don't blame you. You should." Sage touched Astrid's face with weathered hands. "But thank the moon goddess you're here now. Maybe we can finally make things right." "Can you testify?" Cassian asked urgently. "Can you tell the council what really happened?" "I can try," Sage said, "but Mordrin will kill me before I finish. You know he will." "Not if we move fast enough." Cassian turned to Astrid. "Tomorrow night, there's a full council meeting. All the Alpha representatives will be there. We announce our mating, and in the same breath, we reveal the truth. We have Sage testify. We present Glacier's evidence, and we call the elite guard into the hall. Their mere presence will prove your bloodline." "Mordrin will have guards," Astrid said. "He'll try to stop us." "Then we make sure our guards are better." Cassian's grin was fierce. "Your 25 elite against his 50 regular guards? I like those odds." It was insane. It was risky. It could end with all of them dead if Mordrin acted fast enough. But it was also their only chance to expose the truth before Mordrin eliminated them one by one. "One day," Astrid said. "We have one day to prepare." They spent that day and night gathering allies. Cassian quietly brought Stone and Winter, his most trusted guards, into the plan. Sage prepared her testimony, writing down every detail she could remember. And Astrid met with Glacier at midnight in the forest, explaining the plan and confirming the elite guard would be ready. "It's risky," Glacier said. "Everything about this is risky," Astrid countered. "But if we don't act now, Mordrin will. He's suspicious. I saw it in his eyes. Give him another day, and he'll have me killed and make it look like an accident." Glacier nodded slowly. "Then we'll be ready. When you blow that whistle, the elite guard will come, and Mordrin will face justice at last." The council meeting began at sunset, the great hall lit by hundreds of candles that cast dancing shadows on ancient stone walls. The room was packed with representatives from every major pack in the kingdom. Alphas, betas, important omegas who'd earned positions through skill or wisdom. All curious about the sudden summons, all whispering among themselves about what could be so urgent that the king would call them with only a day's notice. Cassian and Astrid entered together, and the immediate whispers began, racing through the crowd like wildfire. The mate bond between them was obvious to every wolf present, radiating a power that made heads turn and conversations stop mid-sentence. Mate bonds involving royalty had an extra intensity, an extra pull that commanded attention. Mordrin sat at the high table, his expression carefully neutral, almost pleasant. But Astrid saw his eyes tracking her every movement, saw the calculations running behind his gaze. He'd been watching her all day, his suspicion growing with each hour. Last night he'd appeared outside her chambers, claiming he wanted to welcome the king's new mate. But his eyes had been cold, assessing, looking for proof she was who he feared she was. Cassian called the meeting to order, his alpha command silencing the murmurs instantly. "Thank you all for coming on short notice. I know many traveled far, but I have news that couldn't wait. First, the wonderful news, I've found my mate." The hall erupted in cheers and congratulations. Pack Alphas stood, raising fists in salute. Omegas clapped and called out blessings. A king finding his mate meant heirs, stability, strength for the kingdom. Cassian let them celebrate for a long moment, accepting their joy with genuine warmth. Then he raised his hand for silence. "But there's more," he said, and his voice carried a weight that made the celebrating stop. "Something that requires the full council's attention. A truth that's been buried for over 20 years. The hall went utterly quiet. Mordrin leaned forward slightly, his face showing polite interest, but his hands gripping the table edge so tightly his knuckles had gone white. "My mate's name is Astrid," Cassian continued, his voice ringing clear. "And she is the daughter of King Fenrir, rightful heir to the throne I currently occupy." For 3 heartbeats, there was absolute silence. Then the hall exploded. Shouts of disbelief, anger, confusion filled the air. Mordrin shot to his feet. "That's impossible," he roared. "King Fenrir was a traitor who died in exile. He had no heir. This is a trick." "Is it?" Cassian gestured to the doors. "Then explain this." The great hall's doors swung open, and through them walked Glacier, followed by 24 massive white wolves in perfect formation. The elite guard, the legendary protectors of the true royal line, thought lost for over 2 decades. The hall fell into shocked silence. Every wolf there knew the stories. The elite guard couldn't be commanded, couldn't be fooled. They served only legitimate royalty. And they walked directly to Astrid and bowed. "The elite guard recognizes Princess Astrid," Glacier announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "Daughter of King Fenrir, granddaughter of King Aldrich, the rightful heir." "Lies!" Mordrin's voice was desperate now. "The elite guard abandoned their posts. They were banished for conspiracy." "We were banished by you," Glacier said coldly, turning to face Mordrin. "You manufactured evidence against King Fenrir because you wanted the throne for your line. You convinced King Aldrich that his eldest son was a traitor. You hired hunters to murder Fenrir when he fled, and you poisoned King Theron when he started asking too many questions. These are wild accusations," Mordrin snarled, but sweat beaded on his forehead now. "Are they?" Sage stood, her voice shaking but determined. "I was there, Mordrin. I witnessed your meetings with the Old Council. I saw you forge the documents that condemned Fenrir. I helped heal the hunter's leader after Fenrir nearly killed him before your assassins succeeded. And I watched you slowly poison Theron with the same compound used to fake Fenrir's treachery. I kept silent for years because I was afraid, but I'm not afraid anymore." Mordrin's face went from red to white. "You're senile. Your testimony means nothing." "Then what about these?" Cassian held up the leather satchel Glacier had given him. "Payment records to the hunters, letters in your handwriting arranging Fenrir's assassination, testimony from pack members who witnessed your conspiracy. All carefully preserved by the elite guard for 10 years, waiting for the rightful heir to return." The council members were muttering now, looking at Mordrin with suspicion and horror. The Alpha representatives were standing, moving away from him. Even his own guards looked uncertain. "This is a coup," Mordrin hissed. "You're trying to steal my nephew's throne using a fake princess and forged documents." "Then let's prove it," Astrid said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was quiet, but in the shocked silence, everyone heard. "The elite guard serves only true royalty. They cannot be controlled or deceived. If I'm fake, they wouldn't bow to me." She pulled out the silver whistle Glacier had given her. "And I couldn't do this." She blew the whistle. No sound came out that human ears could hear, but every wolf in the hall, from the weakest Omega to the strongest Alpha, dropped to one knee, compelled by something ancient and absolute, the command of true royalty. Only Mordrin remained standing, and only because he was gripping the table with such force that his knuckles were white. "Blood command," someone whispered. "Only the old royal line can do that." "She's real," another voice said. "The princess is real." Astrid released the command, and the wolves slowly rose, looking at her with awe and confusion and recognition. She was the heir. There was no doubt now. Mordrin made his move. He grabbed a knife from the table and lunged at Astrid with desperate speed, but he wasn't fast enough. The 25 elite guard wolves moved as one, intercepting him before he'd taken 3 steps. Glacier shifted and caught Mordrin's wrist, twisting until the knife fell. "It's over," Glacier said. "Your conspiracy, your lies, your murders, all of it is over." Mordrin struggled, his face twisted with rage. "She shouldn't exist. Fenrir should have stayed dead. This throne is mine." "No," Cassian said quietly. "It never was." He looked at the council. "I ask for your judgment. This man murdered my father, murdered Princess Astrid's father, and conspired to steal the throne through deception and violence. What should his punishment be? The vote was unanimous. Exile. The same punishment Mordrin had inflicted on Fenrir, but without the mercy of allowing him to live peacefully. He would be driven from every pact territory, forbidden from ever returning, left to survive alone in the wild. A fate worse than death for a wolf. As guards dragged Mordrin away, still screaming about injustice, the hall gradually quieted. And then all eyes turned to Astrid and Cassian. "What happens now?" one of the Alpha representatives asked. "Who rules?" Cassian took Astrid's hand. "We do, together. She is the heir by blood. I am the king by training and experience. The moon goddess bound us as mates. Maybe this is the answer. Not one ruler, but two, united." "The kingdom has never had co-rulers," someone protested. "The kingdom has never faced this situation," Cassian countered. "But I think it's time for something new, a partnership, a balance. What do you say, Astrid? Will you rule with me?" Astrid looked at the faces staring at her, hundreds of wolves waiting for her answer. She thought of her father, who'd given up this crown to protect her. She thought of the elite guard, who'd waited a decade in loyal vigil. She thought of Cassian, her mate, who could have fought her claim but chose to share power instead. "I will," she said, "for my father, for the kingdom, and for us." The hall erupted in cheers. And as Cassian pulled her close, as the mate bond sang between them and the elite guard howled their approval, Astrid felt something settle in her chest. Purpose, belonging, home. She'd come to the forest looking for a grave and found a kingdom. She'd come looking for a dead father and found a living legacy. And maybe, just maybe, that's what her father had wanted all along. For her to take back what was stolen, to make his sacrifice mean something, to become the queen he'd known she could be. 5 years later, Astrid stood in the same forest clearing where everything had changed, where her entire world had tilted on its axis and revealed truths that reshaped a kingdom. The simple grave marker had been replaced with a proper memorial now, white stone carved with her father's name, his achievements, his titles, and most importantly, the truth of his sacrifice. But the clearing itself remained peaceful, hidden, a place for private reflection rather than public ceremony. Her father would have wanted it that way. Cassian stood beside her, their 2-year-old twins playing at their feet under the watchful eyes of 25 patient guardians. Their daughter, Freya, had inherited Astrid's pale coloring, platinum blonde hair that caught the sunlight like spun silver, skin like porcelain, and those distinctive ice blue eyes that marked the old royal line. She was currently trying to climb onto Glacier's back, giggling as the old warrior gently shifted to give her a better grip. Their son, Aldrich, named for his great-grandfather, had Cassian's honey-gold hair and his father's confident bearing, but his eyes were his mother's blue. He was more serious than his twin, watching everything with careful attention, already showing signs of the strategist he'd become. Right now, he was studying the memorial stone with unusual focus for a 2-year-old. "Mama," Freya called out, secure on Glacier's broad white back. "Why grandfather's stone so big now?" Astrid smiled, walking over to lift her daughter down. Glacier had indulged her long enough. "Because we wanted everyone to know the truth about him, about who he was and what he did for us." "He was king," Aldrich said solemnly, touching the carved words he couldn't yet read, "like Papa, and like you, Mama." "That's right, my clever boy." Astrid ran her fingers through his golden hair. "Your grandfather was a very good king who made very hard choices to keep the people he loved safe." "Did he keep you safe?" Freya asked, always the more direct of the twins. "Yes, sweetheart. He kept me so safe that I didn't even know I needed protecting. That's what the very best parents do. They protect you without you even realizing it." Cassian joined them, resting his hand on Astrid's shoulder. 5 years of ruling together had only strengthened their bond. The mate connection that had seemed impossible at first had become the foundation of everything they built. The kingdom was stronger now than it had been in generations, united under co-rulers who proved that sharing power made you stronger, not weaker. The past 5 years hadn't been easy. Learning to rule while learning to be partners, rooting out the last of Mordrin's conspirators, rebuilding trust with packs that had believed the lies for so long. There'd been challenges, arguments, moments when the weight of 2 crowns seemed too heavy to bear. But they'd faced every obstacle together, and that made all the difference. "Do you think he'd be proud?" Astrid asked softly, looking at her father's memorial. It was a question she asked often, especially on difficult days when she questioned her decisions. "I think he'd be amazed," Cassian said, wrapping his arm around her waist and pulling her close. "You've done what he couldn't. You've united the kingdom, made peace between the old guard and the new, given our people the truth they deserved while maintaining the stability they needed." "We did it," Astrid corrected, leaning into his warmth. "Together." That was their motto, carved into the new seal they'd designed for their joint reign. 2 wolves, one white and one gold, standing side by side beneath the words, "Stronger together." The old seal had shown a single wolf standing alone, dominant and isolated. Their new one showed partnership, balance, unity. "Papa!" Aldrich tugged on Cassian's pants. "Gamma Glacier says grandfather had 25 guards. Like us." "That's right." Cassian knelt to his son's level. "Your grandfather commanded the elite guard's loyalty through his strength and his honor. Now they protect you and your sister because of him, because his line continues through your mama. And through you," Glacier added, shifting to human form and approaching with Freya still clinging to his shoulder. The years had been kind to the old warrior. Oh, he had more white in his hair, more lines around his eyes, but he moved with the same fluid grace, the same lethal confidence. "The elite guard serves the throne. With you 2 ruling together, we serve both lines, the old and the new, united at last." Freya reached for her mother, and Astrid took her, settling the girl on her hip. "Will you protect us forever?" Freya asked Glacier with the innocent directness of a child. "Until my dying breath, little princess," Glacier promised solemnly. "And when I fall, another will take my place. The elite guard's oath is eternal." "But won't you be sad?" Freya's lower lip trembled. "When you die." Glacier's weathered face softened. "Death isn't something to fear when you've lived with purpose. I waited 10 years for your mother to come of age. I've watched you both grow from infants to these clever, strong children. I've seen the kingdom heal. My purpose is fulfilled. Whenever death comes, I'll face it with honor." "Not for many years yet," Astrid said firmly, reaching out to squeeze Glacier's shoulder. "We still need you. The twins need you. Your family now." Something shifted in Glacier's expression, a flash of emotion quickly controlled. In all his years of service, he'd never been called family. The elite guard were respected, honored, feared even. But they stood apart, elevated above normal wolves by their oath and their purpose. To be called family by his princess was a gift he'd never expected. "Then I'll stay as long as I can," he said quietly. Aldrich tugged on his mother's dress. "Mama, tell the story about how you found grandfather." It was their favorite bedtime story, though Astrid suspected they liked the drama of wolves and secrets more than they understood the deeper meaning. Still, she knelt in the soft grass, settling both twins in her lap, and began the tale they'd heard 100 times. 10 years ago, when I was 23 years old, I left my pack with nothing but a map and white roses. Cassian sat beside her, adding details she forgot, making the twins laugh with his dramatic voices for different characters. The 25 wolves of the elite guard lounged around the clearing in their wolf forms, some sleeping in patches of sunlight, others watching the tree line with eternal vigilance. This clearing had been their home for 10 years, their post, their sacred duty. Now it was a place of remembrance and family, of children's laughter and healing. When the story ended, with Astrid and Cassian ruling together and everyone living happily, Freya yawned widely. "I like when the 25 wolves bow. That's the best part." "I like when Mama blows the whistle and everyone has to listen," Aldrich added. "Can you do it now, Mama?" Astrid pulled out the silver whistle she still carried, the one Glacier had given her that first day. She put it to her lips and blew, and though no sound came out that human ears could hear, every wolf in the clearing snapped to attention. The royal command, the blood right that only true descendants of the old line could wield. The twins giggled as the wolves all turned to look at them, then settled back down when Astrid released the command. It was a game to the children, proof of their mother's special power. They didn't yet understand the weight of that gift, the responsibility it carried. But they would, in time. Astrid and Cassian would make sure their children understood what it meant to rule with honor, to value truth over convenience, to remember the sacrifices that bought their peaceful childhoods. As the sun began to set, casting golden light through the trees, they prepared to leave. Astrid laid fresh flowers on her father's memorial, white roses, always white roses, her small tribute to a man she barely remembered, but who had shaped everything she became. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, her fingers tracing his carved name. "For the sacrifice, for the protection, for giving me a chance to do this right. I hope you can see us now. See what we built from the ashes of your stolen reign. I hope you know it wasn't in vain." The memorial stone seemed to catch the light just right, gleaming like approval, like peace. Like a father who'd died protecting his daughter, watching her rule the kingdom he'd lost, raising children in the safety he'd paid for with his life. Cassian gathered Aldrich while Astrid carried Freya, and together they walked back through the forest toward the palace. The elite guard fell into formation around them, a living wall of protection that had stood for over 3 decades now. They'd protected Fenrir until his death. They'd guarded his grave for 10 years. And now they protected his grandchildren, the next generation of the line they'd sworn to serve. As they emerged from the forest, the capital city spread before them, lights beginning to glow in windows as evening settled in. Their kingdom, their home, built on truth and partnership and the refusal to let old betrayals define their future. Freya stirred against Astrid's shoulder. "Mama, will you tell us the story again tomorrow?" "Every day if you want," Astrid promised. "Your grandfather's story, your parents' story, the story of how 25 loyal wolves waited a decade for justice and got it. How love and truth can overcome even the darkest conspiracies. How mates meant to be together will find each other, even when fate seems impossibly cruel." "That's my favorite part," Cassian said, shifting Aldrich to better see his face. "The part where your mama and I met, where everything impossible became possible." "Because the moon goddess doesn't make mistakes," Aldrich recited, having heard this lesson many times. "Exactly right, my brilliant boy." Cassian kissed his son's forehead. They walked home through streets where people waved and called greetings, where children played and merchants closed their shops, where life continued peaceful and prosperous under the reign of 2 rulers who'd proven that sharing power made everyone stronger. The co-regency that had seemed so radical 5 years ago was now simply the way things were, so successful that neighboring kingdoms had started considering similar arrangements. That night, after the twins were asleep in their royal nursery, guarded by 6 elite guard wolves who took the night watch, Astrid and Cassian stood on their private balcony, looking out over the city they ruled together. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Mordrin had succeeded?" Astrid asked, leaning back against Cassian's chest as his arms wrapped around her. "If Glacier hadn't found me? If I'd never visited my father's grave?" "Every day," Cassian admitted. "But then I remember the mate bond would have pulled us together eventually. Maybe not as dramatically, maybe not with ancient conspiracies and stolen thrones. but we would have found each other. That's what mates do. Even across stolen kingdoms? Especially across stolen kingdoms. The moon goddess has a sense of irony. He turned her in his arms, looking down at her face. I wouldn't change anything, you know. Not the pain, not the difficulty, not even Mordrin's betrayal. Because it brought me you, and you brought me truth. And together, we brought the kingdom something it hadn't had in 23 years, a ruler who actually deserved the crown. Rulers, plural, Astrid corrected, reaching up to touch his face. We deserve it together. Neither of us could do this alone. No, Cassian agreed, leaning down to kiss her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. Together. Always together. From their posts around the palace, 25 white wolves howled their ancient song, a sound that had been silent for a decade, then hidden for another 5, and was now the anthem of the kingdom's twilight. The elite guards' chorus, declaring their oath kept, their duty fulfilled, their princess home and safe and ruling as her father would have wanted. And in a clearing deep in the northern forest, where a white stone memorial stood testament to one king's sacrifice, wind rustled through the trees and scattered rose petals across the grave. Almost like a blessing. Almost like approval. Almost like a father watching his daughter from beyond, proud of the queen she'd become. The princess who was nobody had become everything. The stolen throne had been reclaimed through truth instead of violence. And the 25 loyal wolves who'd waited a decade for justice could finally rest, knowing their oath had borne fruit more beautiful than any of them could have imagined. This was the legacy Fenrir had died to protect. Not a throne or a crown or even a kingdom. But this, a daughter who ruled with honor, grandchildren who'd grow up in truth, a mate bond that united what betrayal had tried to divide, and the proof that some loyalties really do transcend death. The guards never broke their oath. And neither would she. If you enjoyed this story of buried truths and ancient oaths, please subscribe for more werewolf romance tales. Leave a comment telling me what you thought of Astrid and Cassian's journey from that fateful clearing to ruling together. Your support means everything and helps me create more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.